Hi lovely people, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's video I'll be showing you how to draft a basic trouser pattern with fly and waistband. So let's get started. So to draft your basic trouser pattern, you need the following measurements. You need your waist to ankle, you need your crotch depth, you need your hip measurement and your waist measurement. So for me, I'm going to be dividing my hip measurement into the front hip and the back hip, and I'm also going to be dividing my waist measurement into the front waist and the back waist. But I'll tell you guys how to do that. So I'll be using a ruler. A long ruler would actually be preferable, but I don't have one, so I would have to use this. And if you have a pattern master or a hip curve, that would be preferable, but I'm working with what I have, and I'll be using these markers to indicate my lines. And we will test this pattern with this calico material once we are done to see the outcome and to see if we need to make any adjustments. So to get your front hip, you will divide your hip measurement by 4, then minus a quarter of an inch. And you're doing this because the front part of the hip is flat compared to the back part. Then for the back hip, you're going to do your hip measurement divided by 4 plus a quarter of an inch. So you will have excess at the back compared to the front. Then for your waist, you're going to, for the front waist, you'll do your waist measurement divided by 4 plus a quarter of an inch. And that is because the front part of your waist is bigger than the back part, which is flat. Then for the back, you're going to do your waist measurement divided by 4 minus a quarter of an inch. So that's just a simple calculation to get your front hip, your back hip, your front waist, and your back waist. So I'll rule a line in the middle of my pattern paper straight down. So I'll draft my front to the left and my back to the right. Chances are I'm going to need to attach more pattern paper later on, but I'm starting with this first of all. So I decided to mark a top line, so I'll start my measurement from this top line. And the reason why I marked the top line, why I left some space here, is because on your trouser pattern, when you're working on the back draft, you would need to actually you would need some space at the upper part. You guys will understand when we get to that point. But yes, I think it is important, otherwise you will need to add pattern paper when you get to that point. So now from this line here, this top line, I'm going to measure my waist to ankle measurement, which is 36.5 inches in my case. So I'll label this top point A and this lower point here, this ankle point B. Now from my point A, I'm going to take my crotch measurement, which in my case is 9 inches, and I'll label that point D. Now on line A to D, I'll take a third of this measurement, so in my case that's 3 inches, and mark it to the top point here. So I'll mark it from D, and this line is going to be C, and this is my hip depth. Now from line B to D, that's the ankle length to the crotch depth here, I'll take half of this point. So I'll just bend my tape to make this point here, to mark this. And now I'll take 1 inch above this point, and this will serve as my knee point. So this is point E, that is the knee point. So now I'm going to square these lines. So I'll square C, D, E, and B just across the paper. Line C is my hip line. I made a mistake, I wrote crotch instead. Line D is my crotch. E is my knee. And B is my ankle. Excuse this, I made a mistake here. This is in crotch, this is my hip line, my crotch line, my knee line, and my ankle. So now it's time to actually start drafting properly. So I'll start with my front. So on line C here, this hip line, we're going to mark our front hip plus a quarter of an inch as is. So because remember, you always need ease when drafting your pattern. So my front hip is 9 inches. I'm going to add a quarter of an inch, so that will be 9 1/4. Then on my crotch line, I will take the same measurement, 9 1/4. And on my waistline, I will take that same measurement. Now I'll connect these 3 points together. Then on this line here, I'll get the middle point. And I'll label this point X. This line here, this last point here, you're going to measure a quarter of what you have from this point to this point in front here. So basically a quarter of your front hip measurement plus the quarter-inch ease allowance that you added, you're going to get a quarter of that and draft it in front. So for me, what I have here is 9 1/4 inches. A quarter of this is 2 5/16 inches. So I'm just going to mark it in front here. So this is my crotch extension. So now I'm going to connect this point here to this new point that we marked. Let me use my marker so you guys can see. So I'll connect point X here to this point here. So I'll connect it through a 1.5 inch diagonal line. So I'm just going to draw a diagonal line here. I'll measure 1.5 inches on that line. And I'll connect my point X to this new point through this point here. I hope you guys understand. So I decided to change the camera position so you guys can see better. So I connected this new point that I marked to the point X that we labeled here, remember? And I connected it through a 1.5 inch diagonal line here. So on this top edge here, from this line, we're going to take our waist measurement, our front waist measurement, plus 1 inch for dot and 1/4 inch for ease. So my front waist is 7. I will add 1 inch for that. That would give me 8, and I will add 1/4 inch as ease. So that will give me 8 1/4. So now I'm just going to measure half of this right now so I can get my dot placement. And this is going to be my dot placement. So I can also just mark out my dot 1/2 inch on both sides. And now I'll just get half of this point here, which is about 3. And I'll connect this point that we marked here into this line. So I'm not going all the way down to my hip line because, you know, we don't want this to be too tight. We don't want to take away from our hip. That is why we're just connecting it up here. So I'm just going to measure my dot 4.5 inches long. Middle line. Just draw a straight line. And now I'll connect my dot point here. So next on this line here, this is our front crotch line from line D to the end here. I'm going to get half of that line and add 1/4 inch. So for me, that will give me 6 1/8 inches, and I'll measure it from point D here. So 6 1/8 inches, and I'm just going to measure it all the way down. And now connect, basically just draw this line all the way to the bottom, and this will serve as your grain line. Now on the ankle line here, I'll measure 3.5 inches on both sides. But for bigger sizes, this should be 4 inches. I'm quite small, so. And I'll connect this point here up to this point that we have here, and connect this point up to the C, up to our hip depth that we have here. So this is where a long ruler will really be important, but yes, we never give up. So I'm just going to go in with broken lines, make sure I have a fairly straight line, then go in with more permanent lines. So we're actually almost done. There's just one last thing. From this point here, I'm just going to mark 1/2 inch inwards and just blend it. Just blend it to my line that I already have here. And now I'm just going to go in and adjust this curve that we have here so that it blends nicely with this new point. Extended my grain line all the way to the top, and there's just one last thing we need to do on the front bodice. We're going to lower this point here by 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to connect it to my first dart here. So yes, we're done with the front. I'm going to go ahead now and cut out the front so I can work easily and comfortably on the back. So before we start drafting our back pattern, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be needing extra paper in front here, especially at the crotch area. So I'll just go ahead and place some extra pattern paper in front here. So after placing my extra pattern paper, I went ahead to relabel this place C, hip line, and D for the crotch line. So I'm going to take my back hip measurement from this line here plus 1/4 inch as is. So my back hip measurement is 9.5 inches plus 1/4 inch. That's 9 3/4. So I'm just going to mark that here. I'm going to mark the same thing on line D and mark the same thing on line A, our waistline. And I'm going to connect these 3 lines. So it's almost the same thing we did for the front. On this line that we just drew, I will get half of it and mark this point X. Then here comes the major difference between the back and the front. So because our butt is at the back and you need more crotch depth allowance or more crotch allowance, or you basically need more crotch at the back. You know, in front we measured 1/4 of what we had on this crotch line. That is 1/4 of our hip measurement. But for the front, we are going to take half of our hip measurement, not 1/4 this time, half of the hip measurement and minus 3/4 inch and measure it in front here. This is what we're going to use to draw our curve. So what I have here is 9 3/4. Half of that will give me 4/7/8 inches. Then I'm going to minus 3/4 inch from this. Don't get confused, guys. So to make it easy so it doesn't get confusing, I will just measure 4/7/8 inches here, and then from this point I will minus 3/4 inch. So you don't need to do too much calculation basically. So on our waistline we're going to go in by 3/4 inch, and now you will see where I left space here, and then I will go up by 1.5 inches, and this is very important. You can go as high as 2 inches if you have big butt. Yeah, this is very important so that your trouser cups your butt properly and isn't coming down when you sit down. So now I'm just going to connect this new point to my point X. Now from this point here, that is this 3/4 inch that we measured inward, I'm going to take my back waist measurement, which is 6.5. I'll add 2 inches for that. That will give me 8.5, and then I'll add 1/4 inch as is. That will give me 8 3/4. So now we'll just get half of this point. So for this you can take double that, but I'm just going to be taking a single that. So we'll take half of this point and then take 1 inch on both sides for our dart. My dart is going to be 4.5 inches long. So I just connected this into this line like we did for the front. Another thing is, for this I can actually reduce my dart intake. I could have taken 1.5 inches so I can have more extension here. So I could just do that now. So I'll take 0.75 on both sides instead of 1 inch on both sides. Just connect the new dart, and then I will extend this by another 1/2 inch, just so there's more of a curve here than we currently have. I prefer that. So this inner line is our new dart line. Now I'm going to connect our point X to this line here, to this point here, through a 2 inch diagonal line. Measure 2 inches on that line. So now I'll connect X through this point to our point here. And then I'll just connect this line here to our extended center back that we marked here. So for this, I don't want it to be a solid straight line, so I'll just draw a slight curve with my broken lines. So connect this line to this line here, and we're actually almost done with the back. Now, just like we did for the front, I'm going to draw the grain line of this. So I'll take 1/2 of what we have here from point D to what we have here. I'll get half of this line, that's 13 3/4. So I'll get half of it and add a 1/4 inch. So that's 7/1/8 inches. So I'm just going to take that and I'll measure it all the way down. Then now I'll measure 4 inches on both sides. For bigger people, this will be 4.5 inches. But guys, bear in mind that this is a basic trouser pattern, so it's not tight or fitted. So if you're going to, so you can go ahead and modify this if you're actually drafting for a more fitted pattern and you have the ankle measurement and the knee measurement and all of that. Just taking 4 inches on both sides. Now I'm going to connect this point here all the way up to my crotch line and connect this point here all the way up here. So I'm going to need more paper around here, so I'll just go ahead and attach that. So I'll go in again with broken lines just like I did for the front. So then when I get a line that I think is straight enough, I will then go in with a more permanent line. So I'm sure most of you have long rollers, so this will be way easier for you guys. You guys can see all the permutations that I had to do. So yes, so there's just one last thing. I'm going to go in here by 1/2 inch, just like we did for the front, remember, and just connect this line here. I'll just use a curve, hip curve, just connect this line here into my side line here. So that's it, guys. We can now go ahead and cut out and test our pattern. So it's almost the moment of truth. So I'll just extend my dart. Don't forget, guys, that is the inner dart we're using this time. Then I'll close it so that I can get the correct dart line. So I'm just gonna close this. Hold on, guys, straight line. Then I'll redraw this line. Once I get my new line, I'm just going to go in and cut it out. So this is the back. You cut ×2. This is the front. This is our back trouser draft, and this is our front trouser draft. So now you can see the difference in the crotch. Like, there's always a significant difference in the crotch. If you're going to be sewing your trouser normally and using a regular zipper at the back or by the side or even in front, then you're ready to go. All you need to do is add your seam allowance, add your zipper allowance, and if you're going to be attaching a pocket, draft your pocket. So I'm going to be making a separate tutorial on the pocket method that I use and how to cut it and how to sew it. So I'm going to put that in a separate tutorial, so this tutorial is not too long. For this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and actually draft a fly pattern on this bodice, on this trouser, front trouser panel. So if you're going to be having, so I'll put this aside now. So if you're going to have a fly on your trouser, that's like a fly zipper, then before you cut it out, you can go ahead and just draft the fly in front. So I'll just go ahead now, paste this fresh pattern paper in front and show you how to draft the fly. But bear in mind that you can also do this before you cut it out. But because it's a tutorial and I want to show you guys how to, you know, if you're not going to have a fly, just cut it out and add your seam allowance and you're ready to go. If you're going to have a fly, then you can just draft this before cutting it out. For the fly, you need to decide how long you want your fly to be, basically how long you want your zipper to be. So for me, I will stop just here so that it can be easy to wear. So now I'm going to measure 1.5 inches from this point all the way to the top point here. I'll connect the 2 points together, and then from here I'm going to return to 1/2 inch, which is my sewing allowance. So don't forget, I've not added allowance to this yet, but basically this is what this front will look like. So the fly is going to be this box in front here. So I'm going to go ahead now and cut it out. This is our front trouser pattern with fly. That is, we've not yet added seam allowance, but I'm going to leave this block like this because, you know, I don't want to add seam allowance to this. I will add seam allowance when I'm ready to work with it. So I'm just going to leave it like this. So there's just one thing I want you guys to know. So for the female trouser, the fly is on the right part and the shield is on the left part. After cutting the fly now, we're going to go ahead and cut the shield. You guys will understand when we're actually sewing it together, when we're joining it together. So the fly is going to be on the right part and the shield is going to be on the left part. So I'm not going to cut the two front pants like this. The right part would have the fly, while the left part you will just draft it without the fly with just your seam allowance, and then you would attach the shield to the left part. So now for the shield is going to be 2.5 inches wide and 1 inch longer than what we have on the fly. So what we have on the fly here is 5 3/4. So the shield is going to be 6 3/4, because remember, your shield needs to be 1 inch longer than the fly. So this is going to be 2.5 inches wide, and then I'll add 1/2 inch seam allowance all around. So this is my fly and this is my shield. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut out my waistband. So the back, the front, the shield, just gonna place these aside. So the waistband is actually really simple to make. So all you need is your waist measurement. In my case, that's 27. You add 1/2 inch of ease, that would be 27.5. Then you add 1 1/4 inch for extension. That is for the button or the hook and eye or whatever you're going to have. So 27 plus half, that's 27.5, plus 1 1/4, that is 28 3/4. So I just need to measure a straight line, 28 3/4 wide and 2.5 inches long. So this is my waistband. So after drafting the waistband, 2.5 inches wide, the length of my waist plus 1/2 inch as is and 1 1/4 inch extension, I added 1/2 inch seam allowance all around. So this is my waistband. And that is all. Now it's time to test our patterns. To see how to draft the pocket pattern, please watch the video up here. I'm going to leave a link. But now I'm going to go ahead, draft all of this. I'm going to go ahead and add seam allowance to this on the separate pattern paper. So I'm going to draft it just up to like my knee point, and then add seam allowance and cut it on my calico material. Then we will test it out. So that's it, guys. Watch next video for the sewing and testing of this pattern. See ya.